Hey everybody, I'm Steve.
I'm Mina.
Long time no see. We're a couple that loves food,
Travel,
and adventures of all kinds. On today's episode, we want to teach you how to make Portuguese egg tarts. Check them out.
Ta-da!
So a Portuguese egg tart is a little tart. It has a flaky, layered, and buttery crust, almost like a croissant. The custard is an egg custard. It's not too strongly of an egg taste, but it does have like a creamy and slightly sweet flavor, and we like them very much.
Yeah, and I like to add blueberry inside of mine, and you can add other stuff inside too.
It's your kitchen. Do what makes you happy. For now, we're going to take a bite and take you with us on a journey to make Portuguese egg tarts. To make the filling, you'll need sugar, milk, cake flour, whipped topping, condensed milk, and 3 eggs. To make the bread, you'll need salt, flour, and unsalted butter, and of course, because we're baking, a regular kitchen scale so we can get the measurements correct. The amount we need for the bread includes 300 grams of flour, 6 grams of salt, 45 grams of unsalted butter, and 150 grams of water. To make the bread, first add 300 grams of flour to a large mixing bowl. I like to add the salt in as I add the flour. Technically, you can sift it in. I'm not sure how to do that. This seems to work just fine. I'll also make sure it's well mixed by just stirring it with a fork a few times. Next, we add the unsalted butter. We want to incorporate the butter in this flour mixture, and so it helps to break it apart into sections first. This butter's been resting on the counter, so it's very soft, and it's easy to break it apart with a knife. After we've broken it down into small chunks, we can start pinching it into the dough. So this ends up crushing the little pieces of butter into even smaller and flatter pieces, and mixing with the flour helps dry it out and spread it around. So if we keep pinching and kneading the dough in, the butter ends up well incorporated and kind of crumbly in the flour mixture. Last, we add the 150 grams of water and work it in. First, the dough is very sticky and a little hard to manage, but the more you knead it and the more you keep peeling it off your fingers, the easier it gets to work until it's eventually a little ball of dough. After we finish making our dough ball, we're going to get some cling wrap and cover the whole bowl to refrigerate for 1.5 to 2 hours. To get the bread of our egg tarts to be flaky and light, we're also going to fold it together with a sheet of butter. To prepare that sheet of butter, we need 180 grams of unsalted butter, a Ziploc bag, and a roller. Again, this butter's been left out on the counter for a little while, so it's very soft and malleable. This Ziploc bag isn't the best for this because it has this little flat part on the bottom. We basically want to use the shape of the bag to force the butter into a rectangle, and the bottom of this is not going to work. That's not a big deal. What we'll do is we'll end up making it at the top of the bag where the Ziploc zipper is, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So we open up the Ziploc bag, and we put both pieces of butter in. Again, if you let the butter sit on the counter and warm up, this will make the process so much easier. You can see already that just pressing the butter makes it lose its shape and start to fill out the bottom of the bag. Once it's started, we're going to close the Ziploc bag, fold under part of the bag that we need to make a firm crease so we have an edge of our rectangle, and from here we're going to roll the butter until it fills that shape and becomes a butter sheet. As you can see, the butter is very soft and it's very easy to press it and change its shape. Once it's started, we seal up the Ziploc bag, and this gives us the rough shape of the rectangle we want to form. Using the rolling pin, we press the butter down until it conforms to the shape. You may find as you're doing this that you need to periodically stop, open the bag, and push the air out. Of course, if there are air bubbles, it'll interfere with you getting the butter into that exact rectangle shape. Once it's all set, we close the bag up and we put it in the refrigerator to solidify. Now we begin the folding process. So I have my dough from the refrigerator, I have my butter sheet that's nice and stiff and rectangular, and I have some flour. It also helps to have a spoon and a knife nearby. I just had to, so I play with the dough a little bit more. To get the butter out of your Ziploc bag, usually the butter sticks to the inside of the Ziploc bag. I like to use the knife to both force air underneath the plastic and also to cut the edges away. As a result, you can then peel off the Ziploc bag from above, and then peel it off once more from below, and get the whole rectangle of butter out without changing its shape. Dust your work surface with flour and spread it around. Using the rolling pin, we want to flatten our dough ball and press it until it's a wide but vaguely rectangular shape. we're going to want to be able to fold the dough on either side and above around the butter and enclose it completely. So as you can see, we still have a little more work to do. It might take a few tries. Once it's ready, and we can kind of measure the sides. Yep, that's not yet. You can add a little bit of flour to help the dough keep its shape and not spring back after it's been rolled out. When we're finally ready, we can put the butter face side down and peel off the back of the Ziploc bag, throwing it away forever. And from there, we just need to fold the dough around the butter and make a nice little rectangular package. We can kind of roll the creases to get them to stick together a little bit. I'm not sure if that's actually baking science, but I do it. And then we take the long side and fold it in towards the middle twice, and take the result and fold it over the crease on top of itself to make a folded rectangle. And we can see that we're beginning to make the layers of the creases that will eventually form the flakes of the dough. With a piece of cling wrap, we wrap up our dough rectangle tightly, and we'll throw this in the fridge for 20 to 30 minutes to get a delicious and flaky dough. We'll repeat this folding process 3 or 4 more times, and each time we'll put the dough back in the refrigerator for 20 to 30 minutes. This is our second fold. I went and did some yard work and realized that my hands got dirty, so I'm wearing gloves now. So we'll start again by putting flour on our working surface and spreading it around. We'll get our dough out of the fridge, and once more, taking the long side of the dough, we're going to press our dough out into an even longer version of the rectangle, one that we can fold over itself. I like to square the ends because we'll want to fold this in again and get it to meet nicely in the middle. Some force is required to get that to work nicely. Squaring the edges, we fold it in towards the middle from the top, in from the bottom, and then once again in the middle on top of itself. And if you think about it, when we started, our long dimension was going up and down vertically in the camera's field of view. Now it runs left to right. So we're making folds that are not just all in the same direction, but are across each other at 90 degrees. Again, grab some fresh plastic wrap it up tightly, and throw it back in the fridge. I won't show the next 2 rollings because you folks know what that looks like at this point, and you probably can follow along at home. To prepare the custard filling, we put a saucepan on the stove. We add 110 grams of whipped cream. I've put this on medium heat so that the whipped cream starts to quickly dissolve and liquefy. Add to that 75 grams of milk, 30 grams of sugar, granulated white sugar, 8 grams of condensed milk. I usually measure out 9 because I know some will definitely stick to the container and I can't get it all. So there's that. I also sometimes like to get a little bit of the hot liquid on my pastry knife. That way the warm liquid on the pastry knife can help soften the condensed milk and it will come off easier. Add the yolk of 3 eggs. It's important to mix this in well and quickly. We don't want the yolks to start to scramble and harden and not have the heat too high. Sprinkle in 8 grams of cake flour. This gives the custard a bit of texture and a little bit more thickness. And after it's well mixed, we can turn the heat off and let it rest on the stove. We make the shells for our egg tarts. After we've had our final folding, we'll start again by sprinkling and spreading flour on our work surface. So we roll the dough out along the long direction. As I'm doing this, the butter is starting to seep up out of the bread, and so we add more flour when that happens to make it easier to work. We want a long, flat shape. When that's ready, we'll pinch in the middle and the sides and roll one side to the other to make a spiral. And this will be the last time we fold the dough. We'll end up with this little dough log that has a spiral shape, and then we are going to cut this into 20 pieces. In the Steve and Nina house, all of our cutting boards are equal opportunity cutting boards. We use the chicken cutting board for dough sometimes. Don't judge us. We do, we have to survive. So because we have a 20 serving size piece of dough, we're going to measure with our eyes to find the middle, how to make a little mark, and then try to measure with the point of the knife and my finger to make sure that I've got the center correct, and then we cut this down. You can see that the swirl inside is very nice. Again, we're going to measure with our eyes to find the middle. We're going to double check with a knife length, and if we're satisfied, then we cut. Cutting 5 pieces of roughly equal size is a little more challenging. Right now our dough is still a little springy, and then we can make a light knife mark and see if the results look about right. This one seems pretty okay. And you can always, if one part seems a little bit thin, you can always cut just to the side of your mark to give it a little extra dough. You'll also notice that if you're cutting a thicker part of the log, if it tapers from one side to the next, that you might want to get a little bit more material measure it out for the thinner side. But at the end, you should have 5 little discs with a pretty obvious swirl pattern. And if you see them close up, you can see that they are definitely full of layers and flakes, and they're going to make great egg tarts. So now we need one little bit of specialized equipment. This is a tart tin, and we'll get it prepared by sprinkling some flour inside and dusting the top of one of our discs with flour. We can press it into the center, and then I like to take my thumbs and press the middle and spin the tart tin, and this lets us easily make a depression in the middle for the custard to go and kind of high walls on the sides to capture lots of custard. And where the two parts of the tart meet in the side might not totally match up, but you can always add some more flour and keep pressing if it's hard to form the side walls. You might not get the two edges of the tart shell to match up perfectly. That's okay. But if you find for some time that if you're pressing and it keeps collapsing on itself, you could add more flour, and that'll help the tart wall stiffen up a little bit and not spring back. And in the end, you have a tart shell. We can fill the tart shell with our custard. I usually give each tart shell, if I'm making 20 of these, with the measurements that we talked about earlier, 2 teaspoons of custard per egg tart. One of Nina's favorite things to add to her tarts are blueberries, and usually 3 or 4 will do the trick. Preheat an oven to 425 degrees and bake these for 20 to 25 minutes, depending on how crispy or brown you want them to be. These went in for about 24 minutes. As you can see, they are puffed up, they're flaky, they're a little crispy. These are perfect egg tarts. If you like the video, be sure to like the video. Like it, you know? Also subscribe.
See you next time. Ciao.